In the book of Genesis, chapters 37 through 50, we find the extraordinary tale of Joseph, son of Jacob. Our story begins in the land of Canaan, where the patriarch Jacob had settled with his large family. Among his 12 sons, Joseph stood out as the favorite, a status that would shape his destiny in ways he could never have imagined. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, born to his beloved wife Rachel in their old age. From the moment he entered the world, Joseph was special. His father's eyes lit up with joy whenever he saw the boy, and as Joseph grew, so did Jacob's affection for him. Picture a vast, sun-drenched landscape dotted with tents and herds of sheep and goats. In this nomadic setting, young Joseph, now 17, moved with a grace that set him apart from his brothers. His face, bright with intelligence and curiosity, often turned skyward as if seeking answers from above. Jacob's favoritism was no secret. One day, he presented Joseph with a magnificent gift, a coat of many colors. The garment was a masterpiece, its vibrant hues catching the sunlight and drawing every eye. As Joseph donned the coat for the first time, his brothers watched from afar, their faces darkening with envy and resentment. This coat became a symbol of Joseph's favored status, a constant reminder to his brothers of their father's unequal love. Little did they know that this simple act of paternal affection would set in motion a chain of events that would alter the course of their family's history and the fate of nations. As tensions simmered beneath the surface of family life, Joseph's unique gifts began to manifest. He had dreams, vivid, prophetic visions that hinted at a grand destiny. One night, he dreamed of sheaves of wheat in a field. In the dream, his sheaf stood upright, while his brothers' sheaves gathered around and bowed down to his. Excited and naive, Joseph shared this dream with his family. "Listen to this dream I had," he said, his eyes shining with wonder. But as he recounted the vision, he failed to notice the hardening expressions on his brothers' faces. Their jealousy, already a smoldering ember, burst into flames. Yet Joseph, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, had another dream. This time, he saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. Again, he shared this vision with his family, including his father. Jacob, though he loved Joseph dearly, rebuked him gently. "What is this dream you had?" he asked. "Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" As Joseph's dreams stirred controversy within his family, little did he know that these visions were glimpses of a future that would test him to his very core. A journey lay ahead, one that would take him from the heights of favor to the depths of despair, and ultimately to the pinnacle of power in a foreign land. The stage was set for a tale of betrayal, perseverance, and redemption that would echo through the ages. Joseph's story was about to unfold, a testament to the mysterious ways in which the divine hand guides human destiny. The sun beat down mercilessly on the rocky terrain of Canaan as Joseph set out to find his brothers. His father's words echoed in his mind, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers in the flock." Little did he know that this simple errand would change the course of his life forever. As Joseph approached the fields of Dothan, his vibrant coat a stark contrast against the muted landscape, his brothers spotted him from afar. Their faces darkened with malice. "Look, here comes that dreamer," they sneered, their voices dripping with contempt. In a flurry of whispers and nods, a sinister plan took shape. "Let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns," one suggested, his eyes gleaming with cruel intent. But Reuben, the eldest, intervened. "Let's not take his life," he urged, secretly planning to rescue Joseph later. When Joseph finally reached his brothers, their greeting was far from warm. Rough hands seized him, tearing away his precious coat. His cries of confusion and fear fell on deaf ears as they cast him into a deep, dry cistern. As Joseph's pleas echoed from the pit, his brothers sat down to eat, unmoved by his distress. Fate had other plans. A caravan of Ishmaelite traders appeared on the horizon, their camels laden with spices bound for Egypt. Judah, struck by a moment of twisted mercy, proposed a new plan. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelite." Brothers agreed. For 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph into slavery. Cover their treachery, they dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and presented it to their father. Jacob's anguished cries rent the air as he clutched the bloodied garment. "It is my son's robe," he wailed. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph is surely torn to pieces. As Jacob mourned, refusing all comfort, Joseph's journey was just beginning. Bound and bewildered, he was carried away to Egypt, a land of mystery and opportunity that would become the stage for his remarkable rise. The bustling markets of Egypt assaulted Joseph's senses as he was led, still in chains, to be sold. The grand architecture, the foreign tongues, and the oppressive heat were a far cry from the pastoral life he had known. Fortune, it seemed, had not entirely abandoned Joseph. He was purchased by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. In this new household, Joseph's exceptional qualities quickly became apparent. Despite the language barrier and the stigma of slavery, Joseph's intelligence, diligence, and integrity set him apart. Potiphar noticed that everything Joseph touched seemed to prosper. Crops yielded better harvests, accounts balanced with surprising surpluses, and the household ran with unprecedented efficiency. Impressed by Joseph's abilities, Potiphar promoted him, entrusting him with greater responsibilities. The Lord was with Joseph, the scriptures tell us, and he prospered. Soon Joseph found himself overseeing Potiphar's entire household and all his affairs. But Joseph's rise in status brought new challenges. Potiphar's wife, intrigued by the handsome young Hebrew, began to cast longing glances his way. Her advances became more overt, culminating in a direct proposition. "Come to bed with me." Joseph's response was unwavering. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he declared, voice firm with conviction. Day after day, he resisted her advances, his loyalty to Potiphar and his faith in God unshakable. However, Potiphar's wife was not to be denied. One day, finding Joseph alone in the house, she caught him by his cloak, her intentions clear. Joseph, in his haste to escape, left his cloak in her hands as he fled. Humiliated and angry, Potiphar's wife turned her desire to revenge. She called the household servants, claiming Joseph had tried to assault her. When Potiphar returned, she presented Joseph's cloak as evidence of his alleged crime. Potiphar, enraged by this apparent betrayal, had Joseph thrown into the king's prison. Once again, Joseph found himself unjustly condemned. His world turned upside down by the actions of others. The royal prison was a place of despair, its stone walls echoing with the groans of the condemned. Yet even here, in the depths of misfortune, Joseph's extraordinary spirit could not be quenched. The chief jailer, like Potiphar before him, recognized something special in Joseph. Impressed by his reliability and integrity, he soon placed Joseph in charge of all the prisoners. The Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did, the scripture affirmed. Among the prisoners were two of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. One night, both men had dreams that left them troubled and confused. Noticing their distress, Joseph asked, "Why do you look so sad today?" When they explained their dreams, Joseph's gift of interpretation came to the fore. "Do not interpretations belong to God?" He said. "Tell me your dreams." The cupbearer went first, describing a vision of a vine with 3 branches that budded and blossomed. In the dream, he pressed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph's interpretation was swift. The 3 branches, 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. Encouraged by this favorable interpretation, the baker shared his dream of 3 baskets of bread on his head, with birds eating from the top basket. Joseph's face grew solemn as he revealed the meaning. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, both interpretations came to pass exactly as Joseph had foretold. The cupbearer was restored to his position, while the baker met a grim fate. As the cupbearer returned to the palace, Joseph made a heartfelt plea. "Remember me when it is well with you. Please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison." But as the cupbearer resumed his duties in Pharaoh's court, he forgot all about Joseph. 2 full years passed, Joseph languishing in prison, his hopes of freedom fading with each passing day. Little did he know that his greatest trial and triumph were yet to come, and that his gift of dream interpretation would soon change not only his fate, the destiny of nations. 2 years had passed since Joseph interpreted the dreams of the cupbearer and baker. Prison's damp walls had become all too familiar, yet Joseph's faith remained unshaken. Little did he know that his life was about to change dramatically. One night, Pharaoh, the mighty ruler of Egypt, was troubled by two vivid dreams. In the first, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows emerge from the Nile, followed by 7 ugly, gaunt cows that devoured the healthy ones. In the second dream, 7 plump, good heads of grain were swallowed up by 7 thin, scorched heads. Pharaoh awoke, his mind racing. He summoned all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but none could interpret the dreams. Court was in turmoil, the air thick with tension and whispered speculations. Suddenly, a memory stirred in the mind of the chief cupbearer. "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings," he announced to Pharaoh. He recounted his experience in prison and spoke of a young Hebrew who had accurately interpreted his dream. Hope flickered in Pharaoh's eyes. "Bring this man to me at once," commanded. Palace burst into action. Guards were dispatched to the prison, their footsteps echoing through the corridors. Joseph was quickly ushered from his cell. He shaved, changed his clothes, and was brought before Pharaoh. The contrast between the dimly lit prison and the opulent palace was stark. Joseph's composure remained unshaken. Pharaoh's gaze was intense as he addressed Joseph. "I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph's response was humble yet confident. "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." As Pharaoh recounted his dreams, Joseph listened intently. The throne room fell silent, all eyes fixed on the former prisoner. When Pharaoh finished, Joseph spoke with clarity and conviction. "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same," he began. "God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do." Joseph explained that the 7 good cows and good heads of grain represented 7 years of abundance, while the 7 lean cows and scorched heads of grain foretold 7 years of severe famine. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon, Joseph concluded. But Joseph didn't stop at interpretation. With wisdom beyond his years, he offered a solution. "Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt," he suggested. Proposed storing up 1/5 of the harvest during the good years to prepare for the coming famine. Pharaoh and his officials were amazed. "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Pharaoh marveled. In that moment, Joseph's fate was sealed. From the depths of prison, he was about to rise to unimaginable heights. "Since God has made all this known to you," Pharaoh declared, "there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." With these words, Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and placed it on Joseph's hand. He dressed him in fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. In a single day, Joseph had gone from prisoner to prime minister, second only to Pharaoh himself. As Joseph stood before the crowd, now adorned in the trappings of Egyptian nobility, he must have marveled at the mysterious ways of God. His journey from the pit to the palace was complete, but the greatest challenges and triumphs of his life were yet to come. Joseph, now 30 years old, embraced his new role with the same diligence and wisdom that had marked his earlier years. Pharaoh gave him a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah, and arranged his marriage to Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. As the years of plenty began, Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, overseeing the collection and storage of grain. His foresight and organizational skills proved invaluable as he established storehouses in every city, gathering food in abundance like the sand of the sea. During this time, Asenath bore Joseph 2 sons. He named the firstborn Manasseh, saying, "God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." The second he named Ephraim, declaring, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." As the 7 years of abundance drew to a close, Joseph's preparations were complete. The storehouses were filled to overflowing, a testament to his prudent management and God's provision. Just as Joseph had predicted, the 7 years of plenty were followed by 7 years of famine. The hunger spread throughout the known world, but in Egypt there was bread. As the famine worsened, people from all countries came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. His administration of the food supply saved countless lives and brought great wealth to Pharaoh's coffers. Meanwhile, in Canaan, Jacob and his family were also feeling the effects of the famine. Hearing that there was grain in Egypt, Jacob said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." 10 of Joseph's brothers set out for Egypt, leaving only Benjamin, Joseph's full brother, behind with their father. Jacob, still mourning the loss of Joseph, was unwilling to risk losing his youngest son. As the brothers arrived in Egypt and came to buy grain, they bowed down before Joseph with their faces to the ground, unknowingly fulfilling the dreams that had incited their jealousy so many years before. Joseph recognized his brothers immediately, but they did not recognize him. Memories of his youth flooded back, along with the pain of their betrayal. But Joseph's heart was not bent on revenge. Instead, he saw an opportunity to test their character and reunite his family. Speaking harshly to disguise his voice and identity, Joseph accused his brothers of being spies. They protested, explaining that they were honest men, all sons of one father in Canaan. Joseph insisted, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." The brothers, desperate to prove their innocence, revealed more about their family. "Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more." This information gave Joseph the opening he needed. He declared, "It is just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." Joseph then had them all put in custody for 3 days. On the 3rd day he said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison, while the rest of you go and take grain back for your starving household. You must bring your youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified, and that you may not die." The brothers agreed, but among themselves they began to express remorse for their treatment of Joseph years ago. Unaware that Joseph could understand them, they said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen." Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." Hearing this, Joseph turned away from them and wept. When he regained his composure, he had Simeon bound before their eyes and kept in custody. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. As the 9 brothers set off for Canaan, their minds were troubled by the strange turn of events and the daunting task of convincing their father to let Benjamin return with them to Egypt. Little did they know, their greatest challenge and the resolution of their family's long-standing drama was yet to come. The journey back to Canaan was fraught with tension. As the brothers stopped for the night and one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey, he found his silver, top of the sack. "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "It's here, in my sack." Their hearts sank. Trembling, they turned to one another and said, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they arrived home, they told their father Jacob everything that had happened. As they emptied their sacks, each man found his bundle of silver. Both they and their father were frightened. Jacob was distraught. "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more and Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." Reuben spoke up, offering his own 2 sons' lives as surety for Benjamin's safe return. But Jacob refused, saying, "My son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, he will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow." As the famine continued to ravage the land, Jacob's family consumed the grain they had brought from Egypt. When it was nearly gone, Jacob said to his sons, "Go back and buy us a little more food." But Judah reminded him, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you.'" After much debate and anguish, Jacob finally relented, allowing Benjamin to go with his brothers. The men took double the amount of silver, Benjamin, and gifts of balm, honey, spices, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Jacob prayed, "May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you." When they arrived in Egypt and stood before Joseph, he saw Benjamin with them. Joseph instructed the steward of his house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." The brothers were frightened when taken to Joseph's house, thinking they were being punished for the silver found in their sacks. They explained the situation to Joseph's steward, who reassured them, "Don't be afraid. Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver." As the brothers dined with Joseph, he seated them in order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, much to their amazement. Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. The next morning, as they were leaving the city, Joseph instructed his steward to fill the men's sacks with food and put each man's silver back in his sack. "Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain," Joseph said. When the brothers had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph sent his steward after them. When he caught up with them, he searched their sacks and found the cup in Benjamin's sack. Brothers tore their clothes in despair. They returned to the city and threw themselves to the ground before Joseph. Judah said, "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup." Joseph said, "Only the man who is found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace." Then Judah stepped forward and made an impassioned plea, explaining how the loss of Benjamin would kill their elderly father. He offered himself as a slave in Benjamin's place. Joseph could no longer control himself. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and he revealed his true identity to his brothers. "I am Joseph," he said to his brothers. "Is my father still living?" The story was reaching its climax, with a reunion that would change the course of history for the Israelites. The grand hall of Joseph's house fell silent. His brothers stood frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. "I am Joseph," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him. They were terrified at his presence. The powerful Egyptian ruler they had been dealing with was their long-lost brother, the one they had sold into slavery years ago. Joseph, seeing their fear, spoke gently. "Come close to me," he said. As they approached, he continued, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." He explained how God had used him to preserve their lives during this famine, which had already lasted 2 years and would continue for 5 more. "God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance," Joseph said, his eyes glistening with tears. Then Joseph embraced his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. He kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Only then were his brothers able to talk with him, their fear gradually giving way to amazement and joy. The news of Joseph's family arriving spread through Pharaoh's palace. Pharaoh was pleased and told Joseph, "Tell your brothers, do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." Joseph gave them carts, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he also gave them provisions for their journey. To each of them he gave new clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 sets of clothes. As his brothers prepared to depart, Joseph cautioned them, "Don't quarrel on the way." He knew the tendency of his brothers to argue and wanted their journey home to be peaceful. The brothers left Egypt with their newfound knowledge, gifts, and a mission to bring their father to this land that had become Joseph's home. As they traveled, they must have marveled at the turn of events, the mercy and forgiveness of their brother, and at the mysterious ways of God, who had turned their evil intentions into the salvation of many. Their caravan moved swiftly across the desert, eager to reach their father with the incredible news: Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt. The story of Joseph, once marked by betrayal and suffering, was transforming into a tale of redemption, reconciliation, and divine providence. The scorching sun beat down on the Canaanite landscape as Jacob sat in the shade of an old oak tree, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The years had etched deep lines into his face, each one a testament to the sorrows he had endured. The loss of his beloved Joseph still weighed heavily on his heart, a wound that time had failed to heal. Suddenly, a glint of light caught his eye. Dust clouds rose in the distance, signaling the approach of a large caravan. Jacob's weathered hand shielded his eyes as he strained to see. The sight that greeted him was unexpected. Egyptian chariots and carts, laden with goods, accompanied his sons. As the caravan drew near, Jacob's heart quickened. His sons' faces were alight with an excitement he hadn't seen in years. They practically leapt from their mounts, rushing towards him with an urgency that both confused and concerned the old patriarch. "Father!" they cried in unison, their voices a mixture of joy and trepidation. "We have incredible news." Jacob's brow furrowed as he studied their faces. "What is it, my sons? What has happened in Egypt?" Judah stepped forward, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Father," he began, his voice trembling, "Joseph is alive." The world seemed to stop. Jacob's breath caught in his throat, his knees weakening beneath him. "What did you say?" he whispered, scarcely daring to believe. "It's true," Reuben interjected. "Joseph is not only alive, he is the ruler of all Egypt. He saved us, Father. He forgave us." As his sons recounted their extraordinary tale, Jacob listened in stunned silence. They told him of Joseph's rise to power, of his wisdom in preparing for the famine, and of his emotional revelation. They showed him the gifts Joseph had sent, fine Egyptian linens, jars of precious oils, and sacks of grain. Jacob's hand trembled as he touched the gifts, tangible proof, the miracle his sons described. Tears began to flow freely down his cheeks, years of grief giving way to a joy he had never thought to feel again. "My son," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion, "my Joseph is alive." For a moment, youth seemed to return to Jacob's aged frame. He stood straighter, his eyes alight with a fire long thought extinguished. "We must go," he declared. "I must see him with my own eyes before I die." Preparations for their journey were swift. The entire clan, Jacob, his sons, their wives, and all their children, formed a grand caravan. Their livestock and possessions followed, creating a procession that stretched as far as the eye could see. As they reached Beersheba on the border of Canaan, Jacob paused. This was the land promised to his fathers, the land he had called home for so long. Was he right to leave it? Seeking guidance, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That night, as Jacob slept, God spoke to him in a vision. "Jacob, Jacob." "Here I am," he replied, his voice reverent in the stillness of the night. "I am God, the God of your father." Came the response. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again, and Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Comforted by this divine assurance, Jacob led his family into Egypt with renewed confidence. As they neared their destination, anticipation built within the caravan. Jacob sent Judah ahead to announce their arrival and get directions to Goshen. Word reached Joseph quickly. With barely contained excitement, he prepared his chariot and raced to Goshen. As Joseph's chariot appeared on the horizon, Jacob's heart leapt in his chest. Time seemed to slow as father and son laid eyes on each other for the first time in over 2 decades. Joseph's chariot had barely stopped before he leapt from it, running towards his father with the eagerness of the young boy Jacob remembered. As they embraced, both men wept openly, years of separation and sorrow washing away in a flood of tears and whispered words of love. "Now I am ready to die," Jacob said, his voice choked with emotion, "since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." Joseph's reunification with his family marked not just the end of their separation, but the beginning of a new chapter in the history of Israel. In Egypt, under Joseph's protection, they would grow from a large family into a great nation, setting the stage for the epic events that would shape the destiny of God's chosen people for generations to come. As the sun set on that momentous day, casting a golden glow over the land of Goshen, the air was filled with laughter, tears, and prayers of thanksgiving. The story of Joseph, which had begun in betrayal and despair, had transformed into a powerful testament to God's faithfulness and the enduring strength of family bonds.